Today is International Women's Day. During Women's History Month, it is important to celebrate the vital role of women in history and acknowledge the many achievements, joys, and challenges experienced by women over the years. I'm honored and grateful that our very own Fresno Women League of Voters accepted our invitation for this day. And they are presenting a program on 100 notable women of Fresno community. I also would like to invite you to Central Library to visit the display of the photographs of these women and get your free brochure of their biography. These photographs are shot by our photographer laureate, Mr. Howard Watkins. I'm gonna begin and invite President of the League of Women's Voters, Ms. Marianne Cast.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I'm pleased to welcome you to our 100 Notable Women event. This year, the League of Women Voters celebrated its 102nd anniversary. Since our founding, we have worked to protect and defend voting rights through education, advocacy, and when necessary, litigation. The League works at the local level here in Fresno County, at the statewide, and also at the national level. We are steadfastly nonpartisan, never supporting candidates nor political parties. The League is made up of men and women over the age of 16 who want to understand the issues that affect our community and are willing to speak out and encourage others to take action where needed. We are most known for our work with voter education and advocacy, but with over 100 years of experience, there's little in our lives that League work has not improved. I hope you will consider joining the League of Women Voters if you're not currently a member. Google LWV Fresno for more information. And now I'd like to introduce Francine Farber, the chair of our 2020 Suffrage Centennial Celebration Committee.
Thank you, Marianne. And welcome everybody. We're so glad to have this wonderfully large audience today. That's really a pleasure. This project, the 100 Notable Women Project, actually came into being starting in 2018 when we began planning for 2020, the 100th anniversary of women getting the right to vote through the 19th Amendment to the Constitution back in 1920. Our idea was to plan one special event for each month of 2020, and we did accomplish that planning. Some of you may have attended our kickoff event in January 2020. We had an exhibit of the First Ladies, the wives of each of our presidents, large oil portraits that were exhibited for a month at City Hall, with the exhibit opening with a gala cocktail party and speaker who's an expert on the First Ladies and gave us inside information on what their lives were like and how they functioned. In February, we partnered with Black Women Organized for Political Action, BWOPA, and they put on a successful reenactment of 3 Black suffragists. In February, we also had a seminar at Fresno City College on voting and people of color, which drew about 80 students to hear a panel discussion. And then we got shut down in March. We were completing our planning for the 100 Notable Women exhibit, and we had actually partnered with Dr. Castro and the Madden Library. What has happened to them recently? We were going to put on a reception for 100 people and a month-long exhibit at the Madden Library with not only the 100 women posters being exhibited, but also other suffrage artifacts that we have accumulated. Well, you know what happened. So we've been sitting on this material for exactly 2 years now. It would have been March 2020 if we had had this exhibit on time, and now it's 2 years later. We had also planned a dinner for 400 people with speakers and exhibits for April 2020, which of course also didn't happen. Meanwhile, we were able to have an online event partnering with the Clovis Veterans Memorial Unit with a history of women in the military. And I think it may still be up on their website, and it's fascinating. Recently, we had a spectacular online event with the Fresno Master Chorale, with a choral work developed by a local composer and a local poet, paired with a conversation with the artists describing how they collaborated on this very special multimedia work. So we did accomplish some of our goals, even though the pandemic shut some of them down. So here we are today, only 2 years later than we thought we would be, celebrating 100 notable women of Fresno. This exhibit was shown during October at the Fresno Art Museum, where we also had an opening event that was very successful and well attended. The Fresno County Library offered to show our very large posters during March this year, and we welcome their partnership and hope you get a chance to go down there and look at them. Then we thought we should plan an event to go with this exhibit because so many people who saw the exhibit at the museum wanted to know more about how it was developed. So let me tell you how we came to get these 100 women. We had a committee of 7 league members. We sat around my dining room table and we brainstormed names from the past and present of notable women from this area. We didn't know we wanted 100 names until we got going and we realized how many there could be. We began to realize that we had some categories falling into place. The largest is women who've been involved in government with 18. As we looked at the names, we saw other categories: law, which eventually had 17 women in it, community activist, 15 women, arts, 12, education, 11, business, 10, media, 7, athletics, 5, and agriculture, 3. That's not to say that we couldn't have chosen many more women, but we wanted to stop at 100 because of the Centennial. We did try to get diversity in age, occupation, and ethnicity, and we think that we succeeded in that. So that's how we did it. It wasn't really complicated. It just took a long time because there were so many people. Some of them are deceased, and we knew that. I mean, some of them are from the old days. They're from the 1920s, 1930s in Fresno. Most are from, I would call it the modern era from, 1960 on or so. You can tell that I'm that old if I call 1960 the modern era, I guess. So I'd like to tell you about Howard's photography. He took most of these photographs. Some of them were contributed, and some we had to research very deeply from the people from the old days. We contacted relatives and we looked in archives, and we found some of the deceased notable women from the early part of the 1900s, but Howard took most of those photos. So I'd like him to tell you about his experiences now. Howard, please.
Thank you, and kudos to the league. And one little quick note, Zoom is the one positive thing I can say about COVID for those of us that are not in Fresno. It's a terrible price to pay, but I've been able to participate. And as you may notice, got my camera, so I'm taking some screenshots of this event. When I started taking photos in Fresno when we moved here in '73, it really was a hobby. It took me 11 years to take 10,000 photos, which for a lot of people would be a lot of photos, but I've taken almost 400,000 photos. And when I heard about the project and saw the working list, which was more than 100, I said, oh, I think I have a photo. Oh, I think I have a photo of her. Oh, I have a photo of her. And I've been working on indexing those photos. I mean, when I retired from active lawyering in '07, that was what I was going to work on. Well, there's all these events in Fresno, and I added 250,000 photos since I retired as a lawyer. So I'm still working on the indexing. But from '73 through 1988, there's substantially indexed. And so those names, a lot of them became very easy to find. And typically I would have a photo of a close-up of somebody, and that would work, or I could take a picture of the picture or edit the photo to make it more of a portrait. And then for photos that we needed. Some of the members of the committee found some. I found some. I have Pop Laval's as Pop Song book, 4 volumes. I think there's a couple photos in there. There was the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom did a booklet of famous Fresno women, and there were photos in there. So it's just a matter of going through it, and a lot of people cooperated. There were a couple photos of a photo that was really old that just did not have much integrity in terms of holding together as a good picture, but it was the only photo that we could come up with for 1 or 2 of them. And it was a joy to work with. And Francine, you were a joy to work with. You're very accommodating. And I still haven't seen the exhibit in person, but one of these days. And
Thank you, Howard.
I'll be happy to respond.
Thank you, Howard. You really need to come up to Fresno to see the exhibit. So we have these 10 giant posters at the library, and they're divided into those categories that I mentioned. And each one has a photo of the notable woman, and next to it, her biography. And it's very small. It's, you know, a short paragraph, really, because that's all we had room for, but they're very interesting. And I think you would enjoy seeing them. We invited some of the notable women to speak with us today to tell us their stories and perhaps answer your questions eventually. So I would like to introduce them one by one now. The first one on our list is Luisa Medina. Luisa, please go ahead and tell about your work and your life and anything you'd like.
Well, let me just start off.
But don't ask for money.
Okay. So it's really a pleasure to be here this evening, and I want to thank the League for including me in this project of 100 notable women. I'm not certain that I'm all that notable, but nevertheless, especially when I look at all of you and your faces here that I can see on Zoom, and then having been at the ceremony at the Art Museum and hearing Mary Curry speak and Juanita and all the others, it's just amazing. And so I truly grateful and humbled to be a part of this program as well. So my life ain't all that exciting. It ain't all that interesting. I guarantee you that. So in the late 70s, I became the director of Centro La Familia, a small advocacy agency working on behalf of low-income families in the county. Way back then, you know, it's not that far back, but it is way back then, there were very few women who headed up a nonprofit agency. And there were literally, I couldn't come to mind of anyone that was a woman of color, much less a Latina. So, you know, when we talk about role models, of course, it's my mother who was a great role model. She believed in community service, and I grew up around that. And at one point in her life, she was recognized by the local Chamber of Commerce for all of the community work that she had done, which included, you know, raising funds for the seniors program here in Fowler and St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Every year she'd go on and raise money. And then when the earthquakes hit both in Mexico City and Nicaragua, she went door to door as well, raising money for the devastation. She was very proud of her Mexican background, and every September she would decorate the superintendent's office, which was right on Merced Street, the main street, big window with all of the things that she had representing the Mexican culture. She did it for 2 reasons. One was to educate the rest of the community here in town about our heritage, and the other was to celebrate Mexican Independence Day. So her exhibits were up for a whole month during the month of September. And she was very proud of her Mexican heritage. And like me, I'm very proud to be a Latina as well. Other role models growing up were Mary and Wright Edelman, who in 1973 founded the Children's Defense Fund. And I followed her still do, for many years. And the Children's Defense Fund is a nonprofit advocacy agency working on behalf of children and improving in particular the lives of children, those children who live in poverty and their families, of course.
She was an attorney. She was involved with the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King, and she fought to reform the foster care system. She fought for funds for child care programs, and she was also instrumental in helping to establish the Head Start program. All items that are near and dear to my heart here. Others that I looked up to as well as I was growing up was, of course, Angela Davis, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy. My mother was a big John Kennedy fan, and I became a Robert Kennedy fan. I think I was I was in sixth grade when President Kennedy was shot, and Malcolm X also. So part of the family background, my mother was born in Imperial, California in 1918. My father was born in Rio Grande, Zacatecas in Mexico in 1909. So there's 9 years apart there, if my math is correct. I never got a chance to meet any of my family, my dad's family, until 1998. When, as part of the Sister City, Torreon Sister City program that Judge Armando Rodriguez was very committed to it, as were a couple of other people, sponsored a trip to Torreon, and my brother and I and sister-in-law and my nephew went. And we rented a car and went down to Rio Grande, Zacatecas, and met a whole bunch of cousins down there that we never even knew had. Once my father left Mexico, he did not return back to Rio Grande. So the other thing here that's interesting that I think has impacted my life is that my parents were late in life in getting married. My mother was 28 years old, and that is unheard of. Way back in the 40s for a Mexican woman not to have been married, to wait that long. And my father was, what's my math here, 37. They were married in Yuma, Arizona, and settled here in Fowler. Well, in the Central Valley area, I should say, and eventually here in Fowler area. So like so many others, we were farm workers. My dad and my mother worked in the fields, sunrise to sunset. And as a child, growing up in the summer months, we picked grapes, which was always a lot of fun. Yeah. And in the winter months, we pruned and tied vines. The one good thing that my parents did was any money we made, we were able to buy our school clothes. That's what it went to. So we knew we had a goal that we were working towards, and we were working. I have a memory of myself at, I would have dated about 3 or 4 years old. Before that damn cotton picking machine came in, we used to pick cotton. And so I remember riding on the back of the sack, these humongous sacks that you fill it up and you go weigh it. And then I don't know how they pay you, but they pay you. And so I remember riding on the back of my dad's sack. And then I would go up in front of the row and make little bundles of cotton, and he would come and pick them up and throw them in a sack. So some of you may remember the flour sacks that a lot of women used to make dresses for their children. My mother made me a slip and a dress, and she made me a little sack. So I remember going down that row and putting cotton in those little sacks until the cotton picking machine put everybody out of business. There was no more work. It wasn't worth it. So I was born and raised here in Fowler. I moved back to Fowler here about 18, 20 months or so ago, and I'm living on the property of where I grew up at. So I am the youngest. I am the baby of 4 siblings, and damn proud of that. And also proud, once the baby, always the baby, until the grandchild comes in and you're booted out. So my oldest, and I'm proud of what my siblings have accomplished. They're all retired. Make fun of me because I'm still working. But my older sister, Gloria, was a CPA. Dolores was an elementary school teacher with Fresno Unified. And my brother, Cirillo, retired out as battalion chief for the Fresno City Fire Department. So working at Centro, I had the opportunity to work very closely with other community leaders on a whole bunch of issues that impacted low-income residents, be it housing or healthcare or education. Someone who I looked up to and who I met very young in my career, I was very young in my career, was Joe Williams, who was on the city council at that time, and he was the executive director of Fresno EOC Economics Opportunities Commission. And so I came to serve on his board for about 11 years and appointed by some group to represent the Latino community. You know, that kind of was the start of my, or continuing, I should probably say, of my community work here in Fresno. While on the board, I became the first woman to ever serve as president for 3 years during the 20th anniversary of EOC, if I remember correctly. And that no other woman served until maybe within the last 5 or 6 years in that role. So from this experience, I learned a great deal. I paid attention to how Joe conducted himself, how he dealt with other people. And I learned the importance of listening and engaging community residents. I learned how nonprofits function. I learned about the value of establishing key relationships and taking risks as well. Then into EOC then and again today is among the top 2, if not the largest, the second largest community action agency in the country. And it's a product of the war on poverty that President Johnson signed. So of course I became involved in local politics. I worked on several campaigns over the years for city council and board of supervisors. I like working, I don't do it as much anymore, I probably should consider it, but I like working with on local politics because I can reach out and touch my council member or my board of supervisor and not have to go to Washington, or they're here in my backyard, let me just put it that way. So I helped to elect folks like Les Kimber to the council, Karen Humphrey, both to the council and as mayor, Chris Peterson to the council, Juan Arambula to when he first ran for trustee, when he ran for board member, and when he ran for assembly as well. And then my dear friend, Esther Padilla, who was the first Latina elected to the city council and was also one of 100 notable women. So since this is Women's History Month, in the early 80s, I had the pleasure of meeting the other notable woman here, and that's Miss Jackie Ryle, who was working as the Fresno City Clerk. While at Centro, it had come to our attention that the Fresno County Jail was not attending to the needs and concerns of pregnant women in their jail. And so I can't remember how it happened. I think the woman who had been in jail might have been a client, but she also indicated that pregnant women were not being attended to. So what we did was, was taking one of those risks. Before I do that, you may have read or be familiar with a similar story about the Tulare County Sheriff most recently in the paper not attending to as well. So and these kinds of issues never go away. They always repeat themselves and they always come back at some point. So we placed the issue. I went before the Board of Supervisors several times. We held press conferences, and that generated a heck of a lot of interest with women who wanted to address this issue. I can't remember how, but dear Miss Jackie Ryle stepped forward to help facilitate these volunteers. And there were a lot of them. This was aside from our regular jobs, and in one of our brainstorming sessions, and brainstorming is just that, a session, someone, I'm not going to say who, suggested that we should hang the sheriff. Well, Jackie very appropriately moved us away from that option. And since then, we've been great friends over the years. She loves to tell that story, and she loves to tell many more about me, but let's not encourage her this evening, because Jackie, I can give as good as I get.
Louisa, thank you so much. I mean, you thought your life wasn't going to be interesting, but
no, it's not.
Indeed it was, and it is, and I'm sure you'll continue. And I see somebody wrote in the chat, have you considered running for office? I think you should.
I already been there, done that. I was elected to the Board of Trustees of Fresno Unified in 2002 and did one term as a board, and also served as president there for 2 years. Done it.
Okay. Well, our next speaker was going to be Mary Curry, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind my telling you that she called me a little while before we started and said today was a very bad asthma day for her and she wasn't able to speak. So I asked whether her daughter, Venice, could speak for her instead. And I'm so happy that we have Venice here, who's who's her mom's partner in every way and her mom's advocate in every way. And she, in her own right, is a notable woman. If we had more time, we could go on and on about Venice as well. But Venice, why don't you, I'm not sure if you're going to speak about your mother's life story or your own, but go ahead and speak. We'd love to hear you. And thank you for subbing today.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to the League of Women Voters. And just really thank you to just the idea of putting us together.
We're a little frozen here.
Background story, her ability to provide solutions. I think my internet is a little unstable, so I hope I'm going to stay on. But I want to just say a few things about the work that she's done, give you an idea of why the work has been important to her and how it fits into the way that she has transformed, not just obviously my life, but so many in Fresno. She was born in the South and really was witness to racial injustice, social injustice, economic and educational injustice. What it didn't do was to harden her to want to serve and to want to make changes. And so her early witnessing of injustice really laid the groundwork and really put forth in her a path to not only identify problems, but really offer solutions. And that's really been sort of that she's always, that's the way that she's always dealt with issues, is to identify a problem, put forth a solution, and to make sure that it is one that collaborates with those who are the most impacted. She grew up in Alabama, but moved to Denver and spent her early years there, and then went on to KU music. She and my dad met in Denver and thankfully moved from Denver to a warmer climate, which was Fresno. And so is the mom of 5 children. She has 4 grandchildren. I think the thing to know about her is that she grew understanding what good parenting would look like. And she had a plan. She had a program. She would put one of us, and each night it was one child's opportunity to spend extra time with her. She values education, and she valued it from the beginning with each of her children. And we all knew that the plan was that we would study hard because that was our job, because in part that was what her mom told her, but she also understood the power of transformation. And so some of the early values that she shared with us were the value of hard work, the value of commitment and community service, and that to those who were given, much was required. And so we always understood there was a community and civic, not because she said it, but because she modeled it. We were all in school fairly close together. And what we knew was that if there was a problem, we could call, she'd come, she would ask questions, she would get the answers, but she was there always supporting, always encouraging, and always leading the way with kindness and compassion, even though she has an inner strength never been broken. Her ability to lead came from her desire to learn. And so she is a person who started out going to conferences on education, becoming a part of boards and commissions as a way to increase her knowledge of the educational system. It really required a lot of encouragement for her to run the school board. When she ran for office as a school board member, she the very first African-American ever elected. She was elected at large. And she did that by her consistency in terms of showing her values, collaborative, and just being a partner to those who were in need. And so it didn't matter if you were a mom in West Fresno or a mom in Clovis. If you needed her help, she was willing to go, and she would support you, encourage you, and make sure that she was speaking for you and for justice. And so that was her mantra, and her tagline for when she ran was "for our children." And that literally is what she did. She spoke for children who were underrepresented. She spoke for children whose parents might not be able to make it out to school for whatever reason. And she spoke on behalf of wanting for every child what she wanted for her own. And that was success. That was an opportunity to reach their potential. And that was an opportunity for everyone to be treated with dignity and respect. She was elected twice to the school board, and then also served on Fresno Pacific University's board for 3 terms. But she didn't just stop at education. She is community minded, and she decided, she noticed things in the community that were not right. She was more than willing to organize community members and to address those problems. And so Concerned Citizens for Quality Education was one of those early organizations that she put together, really to focus on education, but also to acknowledge the graduations of our African-American students. And it's still a program that supports our students to this day. She also looked at and said, there are some issues in West Fresno that are decades that I will not sit by on, despite the fact that I am retired, despite the fact that I may be over 75. So she's been in this battle for decades. She's a person, again, who doesn't just look at the problem, but identifies the solution. And so Concerned Citizens for West Fresno has been fighting this battle with sites in West Fresno for decades. She's been the leader. She's persistent. She always has a plan. She leads with compassion. And she never, ever decides that it's not worth the fight. And so it's an honor for me to just say a few words about her work, to say a few words of gratitude about how she is meaningful to my family, but also to recognize that she really did groundwork for a number of community organizers that are in Fresno now, and that our work has been broadened because we have such a model. And so the community organizing model of reaching people where they are, of identifying problems, of putting together coalitions, and of being the charge for justice and respect for all people is a legacy that she is currently living. And so it's really an honor for me to say a few words. It's an honor for her to be a part of this 100 Notable Women. And I just, again, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words on her behalf.
Denise, thank you so much. That was just lovely. And, you know, your mother plays a very special role in our community, and we're so happy to have her here and to have her walking the path that she's been walking for so long. And obviously, she's done a great job with her children, and you're on the path and you're creating your own path as well. So thank you very much for filling in, which you did most admirably, and I'm sure your mother would be very proud. And we are so proud of her and of you. Thank you very much.
I will share that with her. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Perhaps she will be able to see this recording eventually on YouTube, and then she can hear the words that you said. That would be very nice. Our next speaker is Juanita Stevenson, known to many of us through her media work. And she's going to talk about that a little bit and other things as well in her life story. Thank you, Juanita.
Thank you, Francine. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank the League for including me in this whole list of being a notable woman. I have to tell you, I was a little surprised when I first saw that, and to me it was quite an honor. I looked at the list, and so many outstanding women on that list. Also would like to thank the League for putting on this event and having this opportunity to share my story and to listen to the story of some of the other women who I've known and have had the opportunity to come to know. So it's great to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about my career and not so much about my life. I was born and raised in Bakersfield, California, and people are always kind of surprised to hear that I'm a Valley girl. And born and raised, and that's when I grew up. And I grew up in the 60s. So my life was really shaped by all of those events in the 60s. I was in elementary school when our president, John F. Kennedy, was shot. I was in high school when Robert Kennedy was assassinated and Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. So all of that turmoil and the changes coming in our society, I grew up during that era. And I think that was part of the reason I wanted to be a journalist, is something that I really didn't verbalize until I was a senior in college. And because I was a history major, well, in high school. In college, I was a political science major. I really loved public policy, really loved politics. I loved current events. And I think that's how I got around to becoming a journalist. But I didn't verbalize it until one of my instructors in college, we were talking about, what you wanted to do. And I did an internship at Los Angeles City Hall and decided, nope, I don't want to do that. And I don't want to sit in a cubicle all day long. And he just kept pushing me. And I said, well, I want to be a journalist. I don't know where that came from, because there were no role models for African-American women at that time when it came to being a journalist. I went back and did a little investigating to try to find out. And Carol Simpson was the first African-American woman to have a national identity, because she was the first African-American woman to anchor network newscasts back in the day when there were just 3 television stations. And that was in 1988. And she was a reporter starting in Chicago in 1975. My first job in television was in 1979. So and I'm in California, and there's absolutely nobody there. So it really was finding my own way. And on top of that, not even majoring in journalism, I majored in political science. So for me, it was really finding my own way and deciding that this is what I wanted to do and go about, okay, how do I make this happen? Because there was nobody there to guide me and say, okay, this is how you make it happen. Only advice I got when I was in college is you're not going to start in Los Angeles. You go to a small market and work your way up. And that's what I set out to do. So my first job was in Bakersfield, where I did absolutely everything, carried equipment, videotaped my own stories, wrote my own stories, worked in the control room, everything. And I did that for 2.5, maybe 3 years, and got my first, what I call real job, in Phoenix, Arizona. And I can remember getting off the plane and the news director talking about how I looked, that I didn't look as Black. I didn't have as Black of a features as he thought I was going to have. It also made it quite clear that there was another Black reporter there, and if she hadn't left, I was not going to get the job, because you can only have one at a time on the air. And that's the way it was in the late 70s and early 80s, trying to break into this business. And I remember reading a story about the first African-American reporter for the Washington Post. And that was in 1961. And she talked about how she felt, and she used the word isolated. And that's basically how I would describe working in the newsrooms that I did work in before moving back to the Central Valley, was just isolated, because you were usually the only one. And your news director and your producers and your staff had a tendency to kind of look past you because you were just there because, oh, I mean, to me, I thought back then it was just, well, you know, we have to have somebody African-American on the air. And so when it came to what you were going to do with your career, how good you were going to be, that was up to you. And so for me, it was always striving to be the best that I could be. What is it that I have to improve? What do I have to do to get better? And I'm sorry if you hear my dog, but I'm in my office and they're used to being in here with me during the day because I work from home now. So like they think, oh, we should come in now. But anyway, I worked my way up like we did back in the olden days, going from market to market. And I went from Phoenix, Arizona, to Denver, Colorado, and ended up in Dallas before moving here. And when I went to work in Dallas, I thought I had died and gone to heaven because there were Black people on the air, literally. Every station had African-American reporters, they had African-American anchors. And I would have to say that's when I really, really, really just came into my own, learned my skill. My beat was education at that time. So I've been covering education for a long time. And just really enjoyed what I like about reporting is just being able to learn about a part of someone's life. And it was always the plain, ordinary people who did extraordinary things that I just really enjoyed telling their stories. And so for me, reporting was all about telling the stories, and I love telling the stories. So how did I get to Fresno? Moving around a lot. I didn't like I think I was just tired of moving from city to city. And plus, I had never anchored. I'd been a reporter, and I love reporting. But during that particular time, you didn't get very far. And there was always this disparity between the reporters and the anchors. The anchors got paid more. They got all the good stories. It was just, and I'm like, you know, plus I was a very shy person. And I said, you've got to conquer that. And so you need to go someplace and become an anchor. And I was working with a fella who had worked at Channel 30. And he was working at the same station in Texas. Said, go to Channel 30, it's a great station, you'll like it. So I inquired about a job and got a job. And what I liked about being here is I came here to work. I was producing a half an hour. I was the executive producer of a half an hour news magazine show. It was the creativity that I had and the independence, and doing that, I just really, really enjoyed it. And then they switched everybody around, and then that's when I started anchoring. But it was the idea that I was able to come here and use my skills to do so much that I think I grew more here than I probably would have than staying in a place like Texas, because they've decided this is what I'm going to do. I would have been doing that probably for the amount of time that I was going to be here. When I came here, I was given the freedom just to use my skills to do so much. One of the first persons that I met, first people that I met was Mary Curry. I hadn't been here maybe 2 weeks, and Mary Curry called me up. She congratulated or just welcomed me here and told me how excited she was to have me here. And we met, and she told me about Concerned Citizens for Education. And that's also where a lot of my focus started on covering education. So talk a little bit about today. I worked at Channel 30 for a number of years. And when I had my daughter, it's one of the things where you look around and they're all grown up and gone. Plus I've been at Channel 30 for a long time. And so I retired. I worked in public television for a while, radio for a while. And for the last, I can't believe it's been 10 years, I have partnered with a former photographer from Channel 30. We have a production company and we do independent work. And we partnered with the Office of the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, and we cover education. Our stories air on KC24. So what we're doing is very unique. It's the way television is now going, but we are independent and we form partnerships to produce the kind of stories that we want to do. And that's where I am now, and I'm very happy doing it. The thing that I can say about my career, also where I got a chance to meet Francine, is just meeting just so many wonderful people in this community, including you, Jackie, and you, Louisa, who do so much, and hearing their stories. And that's why I feel like, I'm a notable woman. These people are the ones that are changing our community, I think, for the better. So I'm just happy to be a part of this and really try to work to tell the stories that aren't being told, and to help the young people who come through here who are in broadcasting, because I never had that. I never had a mentor. And I just want to continue to kind of keep doing that. And so I'm still here, not on Channel 30, but I'm still doing what I hope is the good work. And again, just thank you all for inviting me and welcoming me in, especially you, Francine. You're absolutely wonderful.
Oh, thank you. And you've made such a difference in this community also. I think that's what a notable woman does. A notable woman makes a difference in her community, and you certainly belong in that group, and we appreciate all that you've done for Fresno and especially for education. So thank you so much, Juanita. Our final speaker today is going to be my friend, and I'm proud to say that, my friend Jackie Ryle, who probably needs no introduction. So just go on and talk, Jackie.
Thank you, Francine. First, I just want to say that I am deeply honored and very grateful to be a part of this group of women. This is truly an honor. I'd like to use my time tonight to name names. I would like to share with you a litany of women who have influenced me, who brought me where I am to this place, personally and professionally, beginning with Zelda E Cox Walker, my mother, who was a talented artist, who was a performing artist. She was a cellist who played with the Modesto Symphony Orchestra and the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra. And I never heard her play because she married. And when she married, she gave it all up for 20 very, very challenging years, where she stayed in those years to protect and to raise my brother and I. So that was the beginning. That was the model of a person who gave up her life for her kids. And that was an important start. From there, I will tell you, I forgot something. I wanted to open today in memory of Becky Klisch. Becky Klisch was with the city of Fresno for 40 years. And in those 40 years, 8 of them with the city attorney's office, another 12 as my assistant. And when I retired, for another 15 years, she was the city clerk. Becky passed on February 12th. And I will tell you, as we all know, when we are in positions of management and or leadership, it's those folks that are with us and supporting us and doing all of that work that make it successful. And that's what Becky Klisch was for me and for the city of Fresno. So I really want to, I'm speaking today in honor and in Becky's memory. My mom was there from the beginning to get us through to where we needed to go. Then I want to say that I was working in a bank in the city of Modesto, and Miss Flo Tiemann, who was a classmate's mother, recommended me to a woman working in the city clerk's office in the city of Modesto. And she recommended to me that I go take a test. I did do that. I found out when I walked into City Hall in the city of Modesto that I was a public servant. I knew it when I got in there. And when I went in, there were 3 openings. There was an opening in the city attorney's office, the planning department, and the city clerk's office. Whoever knew what a city clerk was, I wanted to go into the city attorney's office because those legal secretaries made pretty good money. When I interviewed with Mrs. Pauline Stanley, she made it impossible for me not to go into that office. She literally lobbied me into that office when I thought lobby was the front part of a theater. And I will tell you, I didn't know how to tell her no, and it changed my life. Pauline Stanley was a woman with very high standards and a decent, outspoken, soft-spoken woman. And she would say to me, my dear, aren't they teaching you anything in school these days? After I wrote a paragraph of minutes that she corrected every line. And my response to that was, I will get a paragraph to her that will have no corrections. Those were in the days of upright typewriters and carbon paper. And I remember the first letter I worked so hard, and she brought it back and she said, my dear, it was very accurate, very good job. But you see, you've made some corrections here, and we can see those corrections. And so the letters have to be perfect. They have to be accurate. They also have to not show corrections. And my reaction to that was, next letter and every other letter after that will be perfect. She taught me so much. And I will tell you, her mentorship, and I don't even know if the word mentor was invented then, her mentorship brought me, when I came to the city of Fresno, to be what I am this day professionally. I mean that. I went right to City Hall, signed up, got ready to take a test, took a test within 3 months. There was an opening in the city clerk's office, and in I went as a stenographer, if y'all know what that means. And then the secretary retired in 4 months, and I took another test and became the secretary, I believe the most noble of all professions. And 3 years later, my predecessor got ready to retire, and I raced in and said, now I'm 26 and I have 1 year of community college education. I can do this job. I've been doing this job all along. Mr. Roten, he's older and he's tired. I'm doing the job. And so the city council said, okay, all right, yes, you can do that. You're working very hard. I was a go-getter. I was a hard worker. They said a quick study. They said, we'll give you that job. Here's the thing. Here are the conditions. We will drop that salary down by 35%. And we will take back that secretary position since you're doing both things anyway. Would you accept it on that? And I said, yes, I will. Because I said to myself, I will get that salary back and I will get that position back. And of course, over time, once I learned how to do all that, I was able to do that. So I want to say to you, going into City Hall, one of the very first voices I heard was Ms. Mary Curry. I mean, it's been that long. My first city council meeting was December 3rd, 1963. And I remember Mary Curry as being one of the early voices, and right on through. These are women who have influenced in so many ways. And I also want to tell you about wigs. You all know Rosellen Kershaw. Rosellen was a woman who was involved in everything. She was president of the League of Women Voters. She was the state president of the AAUW. She helped form the Ani Guild of the Armenian Home. She was chairman of the Housing and Community Development Commission. And at the time she was chair of that commission, she put together a group of women called WIGs, meaning Women in Government. And let me tell you the names of some of the core of the women in government, in addition to Roselle and Kershaw. You'll recognize these names. Ann B. Leavenworth, Board of Education. These are all firsts. These are women who were the first ones to serve on these boards and commissions.
And she's one of the 100 notable women.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Absolutely. Jenny Culver, she was the first woman on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Elizabeth Ibby Shannon, she was the first woman on the Fresno City Planning Commission. Alice May Riley. She was the first woman librarian for the Fresno County Library. So these women would get together once a month and they would talk. And I was 26 years old, remember? And how I came to be part of that was that I was appointed city clerk in 1967. Didn't know anything except that I was a hard worker and a hard charger, and I was willing. And so I met with these women and they answered my questions. They said things like how important it was to be really good at what they were doing because they were pioneers. They were the first women, and they wanted to get that door open and keep that door open for other women. It was really quite amazing to be with those women during those periods of time. So I had these exposures of women through the years who saw that I was a hard worker and a hard charger, recommended me to someone else who then said, yes, I see that, and I want you to come and work with me. And then coming in, then again, down here to the city of Fresno, and knowing that I belonged in government. I knew I belonged in not necessarily government, but community service, because I was in government. And that was not enough. I knew that then. That was not enough just to work in the bureaucracy. I had to be in the community as well. And I will tell you that the very first group that I facilitated formally back in, I think it was 1969, 1970, was Centro La Familia, and the executive director was Luisa Medina. So watching and seeing through the years, seeing Juanita come and break ceilings, seeing Karen Humphrey come onto the council, break ceilings. The first woman on the city council while I was with the city was Elma Sterling, who was appointed to fill a vacancy, and she was only there a few months. And we really tried to get her to run because she was really a good representative.
And she's another one of the 100 notable.
On the 100, absolutely. And she elected not to run after being appointed because she could see that she was making a lot of difference in the world. She was a businesswoman, a good business. Later on, her daughter, Cynthia Sterling, was on the city council. I got a chance to work with her, as well as, oh my gosh, Esther Padilla was mentioned, is another woman was on the city council that I got to work with, and Karen becoming the first female mayor, the first woman mayor.
Yeah, Karen, Cynthia, and Esther all are part of the 100 Notable Women Project. Mm-hmm.
They are, and I think Linda Calandra, I mean, all these women that Linda Mack, these were women that I had an opportunity to work with through the years, to be influenced by, to see how they did what they did, to have, I mean, role models, really, honestly, from day one. And so if we had an opportunity to observe, to listen, to ask, and get wonderful responses, that's what is able to bring us to wherever we are, where we have an opportunity to make a difference, to be a really contributing part of community. And so, as I say, I've seen that list. I am so grateful to have worked with, served with so many of the women on that list, and to be a part of the community in that way has been just beyond my ever thought as a kid. It was a difficult time growing up, and I really didn't have dreams. I actually really did not. I was not in a place where I could have dreams. So just coming along and having folks say, you know, there's a kid that will try real hard, give her a chance. There's a girl who's working at it, give her a chance. And then to get there. And so, and I want to include in that, if I may, I must, Francine, you know, having you come to the community, meeting you very early on, watching you and being able to be in the room when you brought together folks, just volunteers, to say there's no money, but look, there's some things that we really need to do, that led to formal programs for preschool kids and dollars that funded it, that now we have programs in place. That, you know, I'm the product of all of you. And I really, really thank you. I am honored to be a part of this. Very, very grateful. Thanks to all of you as individuals. Thanks to the League for doing this.
Jackie, thank you for your kind words. They're very appreciated. You always live up to your reputation of being dynamic, interesting, funny. So thank you so much for speaking today. We're so glad that you're part of this, and see how everybody is connected here. That's real. I didn't know about all those connections really when I asked these 4 people to speak. So I'm going to turn it back to Marianne now. Do you think there's time for questions, Marianne, or are we over what we're allowed, or do you know?
Yeah, we're a little bit over the hour, but I think if there are questions, I saw just one in the chat. If anyone has a question, they want to dash in there quickly. And the question was for Juanita Stevenson. What is a favorite story that you produced?
Okay, and I have to tell you about this story, and this story I did not do here, but this story truly changed me, and it also showed me just how well I knew my craft. When I was in Dallas, I did a story about this young African-American engineer who had moved to outside of Dallas for a job. He was right out of college. Well, he ended up being arrested and charged with stealing $500 from a Kentucky Fried Chicken and was given a life sentence. Well, first of all, he never committed the crime. So my news director challenged me on this story and really pushed me to go out and dig. And this young man, his co-workers vouched for him, and they would tell you, I really don't care about African Americans, but this young man did not do this. He was here at work that day. He had his time card stamped. People saw him. So we did the story, and then 60 Minutes came in and did the story. I remember it was called I think it was his name Linnell Jeter? And it ended up being like a movie of the week story. But 60 Minutes came in and did the story, and that young man was released from prison.
Thank you. Howard, did you have a question for Louisa?
Yes, I was wondering if she can identify these people. November 1st, 1985, the 20th anniversary dinner of the Economic Society. And I have photos of all of you, obviously. One little joke is Jackie and I have a longstanding discussion about our hairstyles. Yeah. I'm not sure who's had more hair changes. My hair is a lot shorter than hers now, though.
You are too much, Howard.
I don't see any other questions.
So Louisa did not talk about, she has been a mainstay at Central California Legal Services too, as director of administration. That when I was director, we had a $100,000 budget. Now it's over $5 million.
Try 10 million, Howard.
Okay, well that's over 5. I know, it's amazing.
I'm coming up to 25 years there.
Amazing.
Absolutely, can't believe it.
This community has a wonderful wealth of history with women. And we've come to a good place. There are women involved everywhere at all levels, women in business, women in government, women in community service. We have a wonderful history of women. And I'm proud of what's happened through the years.
After listening to the 4 of you today, I'd like to do oral histories with the other 90s, well, the rest of them who are still with us. Yeah, it would be wonderful.
Another project. Real quickly, one of the things when I first came here, that's what I noticed. I said, there are so many women here doing fantastic things. It was the work that the women were doing, and you couldn't help but notice.
Oh, you know a name I forgot to mention? I said I'd name names. When I came to do city council meetings, Betty Knoblet was at every single council meeting. She had better attendance than a lot of the elected officials. She came to every meeting. She reported back. She asked, reasonable questions. She gave reasonable feedback. I wanted to mention that too. Betty represented the league for such a long time. And she was there when I first came in, and she was there for a long time. And you've always, through the years, there was always good representation. Betty Knoblet was the top of the list.
Yes, she was.
Past president of the league, yeah.
Yes.
That is something that's missing, I think, these days in the room, and obviously clearly without now with Zoom, but the voice of folks like Betty and others in there, keeping them honest, letting the sun shine into what they're doing. We've kind of gotten away from some of that, and I think that in this day and age, that's so necessary. And it's really got ugly in some instances when it doesn't need to be. But, I don't know what to do about it, but I'm disappointed that things have gotten to the point where they're sitting there yelling at folks back and forth and not dealing with the business at hand.
Through the years, sitting in all those council meetings, I will say that the women at the tables and the women at the podium that were there for reasonable dialogue and conversation, and there was less of the sort of the dramatics and the theatrics, interestingly enough, because women have the reputation for being the emotional ones. And really, honestly, in all the process, that's where the logics and the dialogues were, and more of a statespersonship through all those years. And I will add this. The women that were elected to the council, you always knew that they had read everything that they got in advance. When they asked questions, they were questions that followed up on the information, not what was already in the first, paragraph. They clearly had done their homework. And this was to a woman. I say this of all the women that were elected to office, many of the men, but certainly not all, that were notable for that they did their homework, they studied, they were prepared. Yeah, I noted that through my entire career.
Mhm.
Well,
Interesting comments from everybody. Thank you.
yeah, those are things that we at the league really value. And you're right, Louisa. So many more voices need to be heard consistently.
Yeah.
And we try, and we do what we can, but what a difference it would make if there were more of those voices in the audience. Thank you again, all of you, for your words and your brotherhood, or shall I say sisterhood?
Sisterhood.
And just all that you've given to our community. And we just so admire your work.
I also want to thank all of you, including the League of Women's Voters, for participating and arranging and helping us to put this program together and celebrate International Women's Day. I also want to remind everyone, please do come to the library, the Central Library, and visit the exhibit, and also pick up your free brochure at the next to the display case. And thank you very much. And I wish you all the best. And your life stories were so impressive. I was touched by it. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And
Mina, thank you. And we loved being a partner with the library. We should do more of this.
Yes,
Is-
definitely.
Is the library fully open now? Are they fully opened at all
We
times?
are fully open. Please do come and visit.
Good to
We-
know.
My favorite place.
Yes,
Mhm.
Thank you all. Thank you for
Thank
inviting
you.
us.
thank you.
Hello
Thank you,
from
Francie.
London.
Bye, Howard.
Bye, everybody.
Howard gets the prize for longest distance.
Yes.
How do I leave here?